Good evening, dear viewers. Thank you so much for catching the show once again. This week's episode of Ask the CEO, a show that comes to your living rooms or even on the go every Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. On this show, we bring you people whose stories we believe, and I repeat, we believe that they have something that they can change about your way of life, how you look at life, how you appreciate life, or better still, a token of inspiration to add to your spices of life. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to take a very short break. When we return, I'll be introducing to you our guest tonight, a man whom you have for sure seen on your screens, and you will be very, very glad he's our guest tonight. My name is Apollo Sabiiti, and this is Ask the CEO. This show is powered by Young and Flourishing.
Do you know that you can now enjoy great enriching shows anywhere through the Family TV app? Here is how to download it. Open Play Store on your phone. Search for the Family TV app. Click Install. After installing it, open it and enjoy enriching content anywhere, everywhere, anytime. Family TV, enriching lives.
Alright, welcome back from that short break. His name is Dr. Baguma Bildard. He is the Executive Director at JMS. Today we will not be talking PEP, POP, that medical language. Today we would like to hear his story up close with this fine man. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So glad to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. And good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure for me to be here. And I'm glad to be able to share my story, and hopefully it can inspire one or two people.
Absolutely. This man heads joint medical stores, for those of you who are probably joining us for the first time. And with the kind of man that I have known him to be over the years, we're so waiting, very much so, to hear the gist, the content of your story. This is a common question they like to ask, Doctor. And if it so pleases you, where does your story begin?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Sabit. My story begins in a small village, in a village called Nyachanga. It is in Rwashamire Town Council, what's now known as Rwashamire Town Council, in Kajara County in Tungamo District. I was born there about 51 years ago, and that's where, as it were, my story begins. My parents actually they are still alive. My parents, one of them, my father is a retired priest now.
Oh.
He was a priest with the Church of Uganda for many years. And my mother is a retired teacher. So my early life, very early years, we actually spent at a primary school called the Chitunga Primary School, where my mother was a teacher. And I am a third born in my family. My mother has 9 children, and I'm the third. So I found myself, by the time I grew up, we were at school. My mother was a teacher then, and so my early memories were actually of a community of teachers and teachers' children and pupils in that primary school. And I did not get a chance to get prepared to start school.
Oh.
When I was about approaching 5 years of age, my elder brother and my sister were in school. We were staying in school, and so I went to school.
School quarters?
At that time, yes, school quarters, yes. At that time,
yes.
The normal rule was that you enter school when you are 6 years of age.
Oh yes, as a matter of fact, doctor, I remember the only interview we did when we were going to school, we had an interesting head teacher, and the only interview would be to
put your hand
over your head, and if you can touch your ear, you can sure
when
start
you are
school.
6 years of age, yeah. So I did not get that chance to go to kindergarten or nursery school. When my elder siblings were going to school, I also went to school. No uniform, no nothing. So I went to school, primary one. And when I went to primary one, the teacher who was there then was surprised to see me because she was also a teacher. She knew my mother and she knew I was underage.
Yeah.
But I said, I've come to school. And so she accepted me. First day I was in school, and that's how I went to school and I started school.
The rest is history.
The rest, as they say, is history. So I started school.
Yes.
I was fairly average student in primary school, and I went on, finished primary 7, and in primary 7, I got an illness. I don't know what exactly it was up to this day. Even later in life, when I became a doctor, I've never understood what exactly it was. But I used to get very severe headaches, and because of that, I could not attend school regularly when I was in primary 7. So I sat primary 7, and I did not perform very well. In fact, I remember I got 21 aggregates out of, I think, 36. So you can see that was a very poor performance. And I had put my first choice to go to Ontario school, which was the in-school.
Absolutely, at the time.
Now, I did not pass well, so I was invited, I was called to another school, I think then Ryonza School. That's where I was admitted. And I had a discussion with my parents as to whether I want to go there or not. And I told them that I think this is not the place I want to go. So I told them, give me an opportunity to go back to primary 7, and I will prove that I can do better than this and go to school.
Wow, how old are you at this time?
At this time I was, I think I was 12 years coming to 13.
Wow.
So they said, okay, fine. I went back to primary 7, and I started primary 7. At that time, because my father was a priest, he had been moved to Bweranyanji. He was working in Bweranyanji, so I was in Bweranyanji primary school.
Okay.
And I started P7 a second time in 1984. And I passed very well. But because of the history of having tried to go to Ontario school and not succeeding, this time I opted to apply to what was called Chitunga High School, later on to be called Montiera High School.
Yes, yes.
So I went to Montiera High School in Senior 1 in 1985. And without making the story long, I finished Senior 4 in 1985. And my dream had always been to go to Ontario school. When I was in Senior 4, I applied to go to Ontario school.
Yeah.
And I did very well in O-level, and I was admitted to Ontario school. Now, my dream had always been to be a lawyer. And from the time when I was in around Senior 2, my elder brother was studying literature. I devoured all books that were available in literature, and I really, really wanted to take that course. My dream had been that I would do history, maybe economics and literature, and go ahead to go to university, become a lawyer, and the rest would follow. But I think God had other plans for me, and which in hindsight now, I think were not bad plans actually.
Yeah.
So I sat O-level, And as luck would have it, I had the same grade in all the subjects. All the subjects.
This literally, doctor, throws everything in the air.
Yes.
You can go either way.
Yes. And when I applied, my teachers, career teachers had advised that, okay, apply for a science course and an arts course. But I knew in my head what I wanted to do. So I applied to do history, economics, literature, and also physics, chemistry, biology in Paris school.
PCB.
But I knew my dream, what I wanted to do. So I knew and expected that they would give me what I really wanted.
Yeah.
But there was a headmaster in Paris school then called Francis Castle, God bless his soul. His belief was that if somebody can actually pass sciences, they have no business in an arts course. So automatically he admitted me to do PCB.
And no appeal.
I tried to talk to him to say, look here, I want to do history, economics, and he said, forget it. As long as you have passed biology, physics, chemistry, there's nothing you're going to do in an arts class. And so I found myself in a science class. What you would call by accident maybe, but when I look at it again later on in life, I thought it was maybe God's destiny. As to where he wanted, the direction he wanted me to take. Yeah. And I obeyed. I grew up in a Christian family. I've been always a believer. And I believe up to today that whatever happens for a reason. And maybe God has a bigger plan than we can be able to see ourselves.
Absolutely.
So long story short, I go to Ontario school. I spent 2 years there. I had a very good time. And Ontario school also exposed me to many other things that I had not been exposed to earlier. Because Montreal High School, where I went, and the primary school, first of all, were generally Anglican schools.
Oh, yes.
And also they tended to get people from very close quarters. So I did not have much exposure to the more cosmopolitan, different religions, different places. So here I'm in Ontario school, and it helped me now to have a different perspective on life, get to understand other people, and I really enjoyed myself in Ontario school, and we had such a good time. We had such a good time. We studied very hard, and Ontario school then was a very interesting environment. In Ontario school, nobody told you to go to class. Nobody told you to go for prep. So it was up to you to decide to go for prep or go and sleep. It was entirely up to you.
You had to dig in.
Yes.
For the self-drive.
Yes. For what you think you want, and go for it. So some of us that were actually focused had to form groups, study very hard, make sure you are not dodging classes, and then we did well. The philosophy of Mr. Kasraji then was that he doesn't need to run after you. He'll wait for you at the end of the year. You failed the exams, and he was ruthless in terms of saying you have failed. If he says either repeat or you are discontinued, that's it. So that was the drive and motivation of most people in Ontario school. But that motivation can only take you so far. Some of us were motivated by more important things in terms of looking at life later on. And when you look at it again now, we have indicated that actually if you put in time, you work very hard, it actually pays.
The fruits will always be there.
So we finished O-level in Ontario school, and in our class of PCB, 3 of us were admitted for medicine in Makerere University. At that time, there were only 2 universities which had medical schools. That was Makerere University and Mbarara, yes, Mast had also started. It was in about 2 years or so. I think then the pioneers were about in the 3rd year or so. So we come to university, and again, of course, the environment had changed quite a lot. From a high school environment to a university environment, and also the nature of the course was very demanding, that I cannot claim much, as there were several limitations. First of all, my parents were not the richest, so we had to work through a very stringent budget all the time, but they were really committed to our education. As I told you, we were 9 children, and all of us really went to school. None of us, I think, ever failed to go to school at any one time because of the lack of school fees. I know, and I could see my father borrowing money left, right, and center, but he would make sure that all of us go to school and on the first day. Whether he negotiates with the head teachers to give him time to pay his salary, but he would make sure that all of us, when the school is opening, you all actually go to school. And for that, we really appreciate that effort that our parents made. But as I was saying, we didn't have much in terms of money and disposable income that would, that we had to use for other things. So for me, I think it was a blessing in disguise to even find myself in a course where there was even no time, so I could create an excuse of having no time. And so we got to Makerere, we studied and finished on time 5 years later. That time the medical school was extremely very demanding. I think in our class where we started, we were about 100, and I think maybe about 60% of us are the ones that finished at the end of 5 years, done and dusted. So I can only thank God for that, because I cannot claim that we were the brightest or were the most hardworking, but I think God had really been graceful to enable us to go through university, and that was concluded. So university ends that time, and that's how we were groomed as we went through medical school. We knew that when we finish medical school, you go for internship. After 1 year of internship, you are posted to a hospital and you start working. Now, I had many first things in my life, really. When I went to university in 1991, I think it was also the year, or the second year, when government support to what they call boom and other things had just ended. The government had stopped doing that. Previously, they would give you money for books and even money, just money, we called it boom for your own welfare. That had ended, so we had to struggle through university, and what helped us was that we had relatives and friends that we could go to, to help us with these things. I had particularly my uncle, God rest his soul, he also died. He was called Lauben Waseta, and he was very, very helpful to me. He usually, maybe every other weekend, I would go to his house, I have a good meal, and then I can go back to the university with some money in my pocket. So that those times of probably helped us a lot to navigate the university system. But now, back to where I was, we finished university, we go for internship. I did my internship at Mulago Hospital, internship finished. The year that I finished internship was the last year that automatic posting was stopped that year.
So it stopped with you, or just before?
Just before us. It stopped with the people who were 1 year ahead of us.
So you get to have the chance to call the shots, to say, I would prefer to go this way or that way?
Yes and no. Surprisingly, do not believe then and believe even now that once you qualify as a doctor, you automatically have something to do. So surprisingly, we finish internship, we are not posted, and we have nowhere to go. So we are staying in a doctor's mess. They say now the doctor's mess, you are done, so leave.
This is quite hard to believe.
Yes.
A country that I think from time memorial has had deficits.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking medical personnel. But it happens. How long does that span go on?
So I leave Makerere. Fortunately, while I was in internship, whenever I had free time, I would work. So I had made some savings. So I leave Makerere, I go to Makindye and I rent a house. And I continue working, I was working in somebody's clinic, so I continued doing some work there in the clinic while looking for something else to do. In that time, I got a number of offers. I got an offer in Barara University of Science and Technology. But at the same time, when I had just got an offer, I also got an opportunity to go to Japan on a short course. This was a JICA sponsored course. So I looked at all options. I said, no, let me see what happens out there.
Yeah.
So I went to Japan, and while there, an opportunity also arose for me to do some work for some years. So when I finished that short course, I got employed by an agency in Japan on a 2-year contract. So I stayed there for 2 years working, and I could have stayed there even longer.
Yeah.
But I looked at many things. First of all, there was a good salary, good payment, but also the standard of living is so high.
Yeah.
So meaning that literally whatever money you make, much as it may be, you actually spend it and you end up the same as you were. And I think that explains why many people find it difficult to leave the diaspora. So you are making some money. If you want a car, you can buy a car on debt and continue paying, and somehow you get entangled in that comfort. But a comfort where you actually don't have much anymore at the end of the day. So I decided in 2000 to come back, and so I came back. Worked a bit in a few places in Mulago Hospital with the Deliverance Church had a clinic in Deva. I worked there a bit, and during that time, I saw an advert for the Uganda Red Cross Society. They were trying to recruit people. So I applied and go to the Uganda Red Cross Society. That time, at the beginning, as a program officer, or what they used to call a first aid officer there. So I started working for the Red Cross, and I worked for the Red Cross for about 14 years, I think.
Wow.
And rose through the ranks from a program officer level, and at the time I left, I was Deputy Secretary General at Uganda Red Cross Society. And just a little bit back, when I worked in Japan, you know, everything provides an opportunity to learn. One thing I learned, and that has helped me throughout, was the work culture. Yes. The Japanese have a work culture which is incredible. They believe that everything you do, you must do it very fast, but also precisely and with zero mistakes. Efficiency. You are doing it very fast. You are doing it accurately.
The margin of
error is near zero.
This time.
They expect zero error. And so, over the 2 years that I worked there, it gave me a certain culture, a certain work culture that for me I found very useful throughout my work life. I've learned everything. For me, even when I work every day, I don't leave work here to be done tomorrow. Never.
You leave every day.
I must leave every day, finish the day, and then I go home. If it means staying here up to 10 p.m., so be it. But I'll finish my work every day. Because that's the culture, that's the way I got groomed to work. And I found it very, very useful. Every time you leave work, you come back the next day, you actually find it there, but something else has come up as well. And that breeds inefficiency, you know.
It only keeps clogging.
So, as I said, I go and work with the Red Cross for those 14 years. And in those 14 years, I also learned a lot of things in terms especially of program management, also people management, but also at the same time, while there, I did some additional studies. I did a Master's of Business Administration, and then I also did procurement and supplies, what they call CIPS. So I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supplies, and I also hold a Master of Business Administration. And both of these I did when I was working. I had family, and I was also studying. So I was combining those ones, and it meant juggling a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it's important, I think, for people to know and for you stories learn that it depends on what you want to do. And if you set your sights on doing something, you can actually do it despite the hindrances and roadblocks.
Yeah, because they will always be there.
They will always be there. They will always be there, but you can manage to go through them. And as I studied, I had a certain feeling in mind of where I want to go. I told myself that I have to work towards becoming a CEO, in a medical field, because I felt that that was an area where there was still a lot of room for growth and a different skill set that was needed. When you study medicine, most times you are taught a lot of things, but you are never taught how to manage people. You are never taught how to manage resources. You are never taught how to manage things like logistics.
Yeah.
When you go to work environment, you find actually these things
are
very, very critical.
Yeah.
And so when I was studying, even doing a Master of Business Administration, doing the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply, I told myself that I need to prepare my skill set to meet a certain demand in the market.
Yeah. Whether
it is a job of a manager of a health facility or a manager of an entity like this one, there are certain skills which you need. And those are the skills I was trying to build that time. So as it were, later, I think in 2014, there was an advert of a job of joint medical store for then it was called general manager then.
Yeah.
And I applied. And went through a very, very rigorous process of selection. Yeah. And at each stage, I think God's grace was with me and I was going through until, long story short, in December of 2015, I was appointed as the CEO of Joint Medical Store, where I'm still at where you have found me today. Yes.
Doctor, allow me to cut you short. It is December 2015.
Yeah.
We will get back to that after the break. But in case you just joined in, thank you so much for catching the show. This happens every Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. We bring you people of his caliber that their stories may inspire someone who is watching the show tonight or could probably catch a link later on the web. We'll be back after the break.
With 200 million people aged between 15 and 24, Africa has the youngest population in the world. This can either be an opportunity or a ticking time bomb. At Young and Flourishing Hub, we seek to turn these numbers into an opportunity for Africa to become a global leader. Join us every Monday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. only on Church of Uganda Family TV, as we take you through the discussion of different topics that will enable you to become world-class leaders and mentors, grow your finances, and become world-class innovators. Young and Flourishing, transforming Africa.
Hey, thank you so much for sticking by. My name is Apollo Sabiiti and this is Ask the CEO, a program that only shows here on Church of Uganda Family TV, and it happens every Thursday from 8 to 9 p.m. Remember, this is powered by Young and Flourishing, and if you miss catching the show live from 8 to 9, you can always look it up on YouTube, on Church of Uganda Family TV, and watch all the previous episodes. Now tonight, we have the privilege of sharing in Dr. Baguma's space, the Executive Director of Joint Medical Stores, a non-profit organization that's been here since 1979. Before we went for the break, Doctor, we were talking after a vigorous series of interviews. You had to conjure up your confidence but you know this is a step closer to where I want to be.
Yeah.
2014 December, Doctor. Take us, let's go way back in time.
Yeah.
How does your day one look like at JMS?
Yeah, no, Sabiiti, thank you. It was very interesting. So I got appointed in December 2015, but I tell the board, look here, I will report in January. So the day they opened, I think it was January 3rd or so, I am here at Joint Medical Store. I had actually only stepped into Joint Medical Store once while I worked for the Red Cross, and there was the landslide, I think, in Ududa that time.
Yes.
Joint Medical Store had made a donation to the victims of the landslide. So I came here then to receive that donation. It was my only time when I had stepped in Joint Medical Store.
Interesting.
But I knew Joint Medical Store, and we had worked with them because in the Red Cross I was working closely with the Ministry of Health, and we had met there, and I knew what they were doing and what they were.
Yeah.
And of course, during the interview process, and it's something that over time as I've interviewed many people,
Yes.
I realized that many people don't know how to prepare for interviews. You cannot go to work or seek to work in an organization which you don't know.
Absolutely.
So for me, if I'm conducting an interview and the interviewee does not know JMS, for example, I am now, that one is a no-go. It means the person is either not interested or does not take the interview seriously.
I think, Doctor,
Yes.
just for the interest of someone who, a young person out there, in today's world, accelerated change, overwhelming complexity, too much competition. I think that is a nugget for tonight's show. If you could look straight in the camera and repeat that again for some youth who will watch it, how important it is for someone to prepare before they actually show up for an interview.
No, I can just repeat it, and for me it's a major issue.
Yeah.
If I'm interviewing somebody for the job, I'm using the example of Joint Medical Store, and that person does not know Joint Medical Store, then that person, I take them that they are not prepared for the job, or they are not taking the opportunity seriously. It means that if I'm going to apply, if I apply to an organization, then I take my time, do the background check.
Yeah.
Is the organization the right fit for me? Does it represent my career aspirations? Does it represent what I believe in, ethically and otherwise? And to do that, you must understand the organization you are applying to join. So it's a very, very crucial matter that people have to bear in mind.
Thank you so much for being very kind to do that repeat.
But as I was telling you,
Yes.
I had, of course, read about Joint Medical Store, got to understand what they do, and there are certain specific things that inspired me to apply. Because I don't apply for any job. I've done basically 2 jobs in my life, and maybe I'm about to retire now. So I had understood, first of all, it's Christian Foundation.
Yes.
Because that evaporated with me and my upbringing and my beliefs.
Yes.
Of course, JMS is in a space also which I hold dear and which I think makes a difference in people's lives.
Very much so.
So that was key for me. But also thirdly, I saw an opportunity to grow.
Yes.
Because I don't like, I've always told my colleagues, and I believe strongly, that if you don't grow, then you enter a slow process of death. So for me, growth is a very important thing. So I saw opportunities here for growth. Growth for the organization especially, but also growth for me. Because you see, you are for every person, the aspirations of the organization must tally with your aspirations.
Yes.
Once the two meet, then you can make a difference.
It's a match made
The moment
in
they
heaven.
don't, it will not make a difference.
Yeah.
So I come here, and fortunately I found a very good work culture. People that are centered on God. For us, our vision is to be the leading provider of health solutions for the glory of God. And that, for me, forms the center, it forms the basis, the fulcrum of everything that we do. So I come here and I found that people have that in their DNA really. And I use it as the base, as a springboard for us to build on. And we started, unfortunately, at the same time, there were certain things that needed to change. I believed, because there were some people, let me put it that way, who had worked for Joint Medical Store for a long time, and immediately in the short term I realized that some people had taken things for granted. They know this is how we always do things, this is how they will always be.
Gospel truth.
So my belief was that we needed to change that.
Yeah.
So the first step I did was, after studying the situation and understanding it, was to convince the board that we actually need to do a restructuring.
Some shaking.
And the restructuring was for two reasons. First of all, there were some people that really you could see they could not manage, they were tired. But there were others who needed to be woken up a bit.
Yeah.
And for me it worked really. So we do restructuring. We ask everybody in the organization to reapply for their jobs. Everybody.
Wow.
Except me, who had just appointed. So everybody reapplied.
That's a huge call.
Yes, it's a huge call, but it was necessary. So that when you realign the people you have to the job that needed to be done and the growth trajectory that you want to achieve.
Yes, yes.
So everybody applies, and we go through a series of interviews for everybody. Most people actually retain their jobs, but they retain their jobs with a new mindset, a new thinking of where we want to go. And for each one in the interviews, we will first understand, are you really ready and focused for where we are going? And fortunately, most people actually retain their jobs. We added a few others, and with the grace of God, we have really managed to grow. We have managed to grow. Our revenue has grown maybe by 200% over that period of time. We have expanded our network of partnerships.
Yes.
We have really grown. We have expanded our branch network. From that time, we are only here. Even here, we have expanded. We have put a branch in Mbarara. We have 2 branches coming up in Uguru and Mbale. So really, we have grown. It has been a roller coaster, and it has been very, very interesting work that we have been doing. Yeah.
In case you just joined in tonight, this is Ask the CEO. Our guest tonight is Dr. Baguma, a man who heads the Joint Medical Stores. Now, this facility supervises over, or rather, I think the best word to use is partners with.
Yes.
Over 600 medical facilities across the Pearl of Africa. Now, we are so privileged to have him here. Doctor, I would like to place a very polite inquiry.
Yeah.
And my inquiry is bent towards the youth.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that through the shaking of those tables, restructuring, to have people on the same page, I would like to believe that somewhere, somehow you've crossed paths with youth.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that stand out for you in terms of the things you notice about them that you believe these must be changed? These here, not only at JMS, but also in the marketplace. Yeah. The things that you believe, these are non-negotiables, they must be changed about the Ugandan youth, about the African youth.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that question. I believe that, first of all, before I come to what I believe, the structure of our workforce in Joint Medical Store is that actually 90% of our staff are youth. Wow. 90%. Those of us that are in the other age bracket are very, very few, extremely very few.
On the other side,
we have a workforce of about 210 staff across the country. Those of us that are above 50 are about less than 10.
Wow.
That are above 50 years of age.
So you're dealing
And
with
even between 50 and maybe 35, there could be another 30, 40. So give or take, more than 60% actually youth.
So we're talking to someone who actually, not just by guesswork or what, statistics support the truth that 90%, the biggest number of the people that work under you are youths. So we are speaking to the right person.
Most of them are youth, and we have observed a number of things. One of them is what I told you. How seriously do you take life? You know, some people come and they want to sit interviews and you ask them, okay, tell us about joint medical store you have applied. And the guy is completely blank. You can't imagine in this era, this information age era,
Available
just on anywhere,
Yeah.
on your phone, anywhere, you can just get information, and people don't know. So one of the things I've realized that many youth actually don't take life very seriously, and that is the beginning of problems. If I'm going to do something, how do I prepare for it to make sure that actually I get the best result out of it? And that needs to change, but I talked about they don't want to spend time.
Yeah, sure.
The second thing for me is about the work culture. Work culture, because many youth want to have life the easy way. The easy way, you know, you work when you want to work, you don't work when you don't want to work, but it doesn't work that way. And it's something that people need to change in their mindset. The work culture, that if I'm going to do something, I'll put my focus, full focus 100% on that. I do it. If it is leisure time, then I do leisure time. But you mix both leisure time and actually work time.
Yeah.
We've been forced to ban the holding of mobile phones in the workplace here. Why? Because people, while they are working, and we are dealing with very delicate matters.
Yes.
This is medicine.
You
are packing medicine to take to health facility. If instead of packing A, you pack B, you can really cause a big problem. But you know, you find people, they are working, they are in the warehouse, they are packing medicine, but they are also on WhatsApp. It doesn't work that way. No. So we have been forced to ban. You leave your phone outside, go and work. When you are at break, you can access your phone.
Yeah.
That is the second key thing for me about the work culture. How serious people take their work. The third thing I've seen, and we have seen it here, is the tendency to want to get things quickly.
Faster. Easy come, easy go.
But the funny thing is that it doesn't apply to work.
Yeah.
No, it applies to the process of work. That's the irony of the matter. You want to get things very fast,
yes,
but you don't want to work very hard. But it is okay to want to get things very fast. Indeed, the most successful people in the world are very young, and they have achieved so much in a short time, but through hard work.
Yeah.
Now, the irony of our youth in Uganda is that they want to get very many things very fast, but they don't want to invest in hard work. That's the irony. That's what we need to focus on addressing. Because some of us have grown through a life of struggle.
Yeah.
So we have learned from an early age that you must hustle all the time.
Life does not come easy.
Yes, as I grew up, I told you, my parents were not rich. So I had to find a way of survival beyond what they could provide.
Yeah.
So at a young age, we started doing certain things. I'm in school, I also have a tomato garden. So when I leave school, I fetch water for the home and also for watering my tomatoes.
Yeah.
And then I sell my tomatoes. When I sell my tomatoes, fortunately for me, my parents would never ask me for that money. No. But I could also use it then to buy the other shirts that I've always wanted.
Yeah.
So even later in life, for me, from my work life as I started working, I'm working full-time, but I have a side hustle.
Yeah, like we like to call it around town.
Yes.
Side hustle.
Yes. I'm working here, I'm full-time working here, but at the same time, fortunately now I have a wife, she's full-time on the family business.
Yeah.
And in that we try to make ends meet. Then we are not forced to become corrupt. Because you can be able to work and work faithfully.
Yes.
But at the same time, use that time to invest in something else from which you can earn some money, so that you are not forced to look at the small other things that you may have.
Yeah, which is very common, that when there is need and as a person you are inadequate, but then you have resources that actually do not belong to you, then you are tempted into
dip your hand in there.
So better you put in the work, get your feet wet, have that side business, side hustle. And I hope this goes out to the youth out there. However little the humble beginnings ultimately pay off.
And people have always talked about saving, and people don't understand saving. They have always said, and I agree with them, that actually the only way to save and make money for us who earn salary is to first set aside your savings and spend the balance, not the other way around. The other way around does not work.
It is absolutely.
If you first spend, then nothing will remain.
Because I think you're very right, Doctor.
Nothing will
At
remain.
all times there are things to spend on.
Yes. There are things to spend, and once you have money, they even become more. So for me, from another age of work, I decided that I would always save first, and then I spend the balance. Now, that's very difficult to do actually. It's very, very difficult to do. So it must be forced. For me, I decided that I will do forced saving. Because I also do a lot of charity things. I do a lot of charity, I look after very many children, I do so many things.
You are a Rotarian?
Yes, I'm a Rotarian.
Absolutely.
I'm a past president of the Rotary Club of Miami.
Yes.
The next Rotary year will be an assistant governor. I'm a major donor to the Rotary Foundation, that's what this one means.
Oh, yes.
So I put a lot of money in charity actually. But I've always told myself from the beginning that because of that nature of, which is my nature, I must do forced saving. So for me, I spend my savings before I earn them. That's my principle. I'm not saying everybody should use the same principle. Different people have different ways of looking at it. But for me, I spend my savings before I earn them. And what do I do? Depending on what is available. Earlier on, I used to go to the banks and get salary loans. Salary loans are not cheap, but they are a forced saving mechanism. It means that by the time I get my salary, actually my savings...
There's a standing order.
There's a standing order for those savings. They're already gone. The bank takes their money, deducted at source. And for me, I stay with what I have, and I plan for it. I also decided that because I don't have too much and it's not inelastic, and yet we must keep a certain standard in my house. I don't want my children to find there's no milk and then I'm happy to lend me some money. Children, no. So my wife and I agreed. We have a specific budget. The savings have gone already. They are not there.
Yes.
So what remains, we budget for it. And we decide that, okay, this one will go this one will go this one will go to this. So what is used for the domestic management of the house is managed by my wife, not me. No? And I'm comfortable, I'm happy. Because I don't have to worry what we'll eat tomorrow. No, that's already set aside, and she's managing it. I'm managing it well. And God was graceful to me, she also gave me a faithful wife. So, I mean, it's...
Oh, Doctor, it is such a huge pleasure to share in your space.
Yeah, but also now, later, of course, I do that all the time. Even now, right now, I have, fortunately now here in Joint Medical Store, we have a staff circle. So I have a loan in the staff circle, which I have taken, and got quite some substantial amount of money. I invested that money in something. That investment is earning me money, but also all my savings are not there anymore. So what remains is what I'm going to spend. Not the saving. They are already taken for the next 3 years on a loan from the circle. So that way, you can actually be able to do many things, develop yourself without needing to be corrupt, to dip your hand into illegal dealings.
Which at the end of the day are never blessed. Now, thank you so much, Doctor. Like I mentioned earlier on, it would be a very, very tough task to squeeze your story into just 1 hour of TV airtime. Now, earlier, you said something about growing up, and I would like us, including the viewer tonight, to have the privilege of peeping into your story growing up, even as we try to close the show. Growing up, 9 kids, by any standard, that's no easy feat. We would like to know how that was like, a typical day growing up was like, and then we'll come to the close after this.
Okay. No, I as I said, my parents had 9 children. They were a modest family, but also by the standards of the village, they were not poor.
Yeah.
They were not poor, they were just modest, but not poor.
Yeah.
And I told you I was the third born. My older brother is the firstborn is a boy, then my sister follows, and then I follow, and there were 2 other boys who followed. So as we grew up, my mother was very clear that in her home, we are not going to burden the only girl.
Oh, had only
So,
one sister?
We had one sister growing up, the others are much younger.
Okay.
The others came much later, they are much younger.
Yeah.
And so, we as the boys would do the normal men's jobs.
Anything and everything.
Fetch water,
Yeah.
firewood, But at the same time, we had the rota for doing the other domestic things. So there's nothing I don't do. I can peel, I can mingle millet, I can
Cook a decent
I
meal.
can cook a decent meal, I can do anything. Because my mother insisted that we must learn these things for our own good, but also that would not overburden our sister. In fact, at the end of the day, our sister had a field day. Because for us, we'd do the difficult men's jobs and also share equally with her in the other work at home. So we learned to do everything. On a typical day, we'd wake up very early in the morning, fetch water, make sure there is water at home, prepare at some stage later when we had cattle, maybe milk the cattle, or somebody is milking the cattle, another one is preparing tea. Then we prepare ourselves and run to school. And we had to be at school by 7:30. That means you had to wake up around maybe 5:30 latest. Do all that, prepare yourself and go to school. Return from school around 5 p.m. You have to take the goats for grazing.
Yeah.
At another age, you take the goats, they graze them, bring them back, and maybe fetch water and make sure everything is set. But for me, I thank God that all that happened because it taught us to be able to become responsible, to do the right thing that you need to do at home, but also to build the work culture. Because for me even now I find it difficult to stay at home and maybe sit and watch TV for 2 hours. It's very difficult. Somehow I want to be able to do something to help at home.
A very interesting man who on his first day of school just showed up, never went for an interview, and like he said at the beginning, the rest is history. Before we close, Doctor, the African youth is at the center, is basically the pulse at Young and Flourishing, which brings us this show. What do you think is the role of the African youth to the transformation of Africa, in summary?
No, I believe strongly that the youth are the center of our transformation as a country and as a continent. But I also know that you can only transform a society if you are ready to transform it. So the first step should be for our youth to get ready for that role. We are, for example, right now in the information era, in the IT era, our youth must prepare themselves for that role. They must see what is happening, what is the internet doing, what is happening in the world. So they must read, they must prepare themselves. Secondly, our youth must be ready to work. The English say that there is no free lunch.
Yeah.
And the world out there is so difficult that there is no free lunch. So they must build in themselves a culture of hard work. Thirdly, godliness. I believe that godliness is a very, very important aspect. The person that does not have the godliness, the spirit of godliness in them, they can get away with anything. They'll have no morals. So for me, the moral fiber of our youth, based on godliness, biblical or Quran teachings, is a very important aspect that we must build in our youth.
Yeah.
I believe that once we do that, we can be able to build a cadre of young people that will lead this nation and this continent to the next level that we want to go.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. His word is very clear. Parting shots would probably call them. He says, there's no free lunch. If you are going to change the world, if you're going to make a difference in your society, in the community, and the community around you, you've got to get your feet wet. Put in the hard work, and sure enough, the change will come. Thank you so much for sticking by. My name is Apollo Sabiiti, and our guest tonight has been Dr. Baguma. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and we hope to catch you next week on the next episode of Ask the CEO. Remember, this happens every Tuesday from 8 to 9 p.m. from the dazzling, well-decorated career tables to the hustle life of the top business people around town. We bring you stories that we believe will have a pulse of inspiration to leave your heart even wanting more. See you next week. Good night.